John Doe Henry by John Taylor. The factory made bread faster than any single man could. But John Doe Henry baked differently. And not only did he claim that he could make better bread, but he could crimp the factory. Broad-shouldered, John Doe Henry was a big, quiet man who kept mostly to himself. Baker hours proved him into a man who preferred the quiet of the early morning to really feel like he was in his element. Quality wasn't an issue until people started tasting the bread, and most of the public couldn't tell the difference. Those who had tasted the difference seemed to taste it in John's bread. But when the factory mastered artisanal bread, things got interesting. Yet once again, it was John Doe Henry that could toast his example into the history books. And through the blooms of the dawning fog, John could see that the factory kept all hours. His customers who worked at the bread factory confided to John that the factory floor was a dark space where time didn't exist. Smoke-filled windows blocked the time of day and the sun's warmth. But when Pitt's Easy Flip Incorporated started producing more than sliced bread, artisanal loaves that felt and looked freshly baked, John Doe Henry's hands needed better. Pitt's Easy Flip Incorporated freelanced and contracted with a national HR firm, which sparked the first idea for the competition. Your grandma can't tell the difference. The competition was simple. Who could make the best multi-grain loaf? The committee that judged this event was composed of 7 local grandmothers. Among the randomly selected judges, only 3 had baked bread before the competition began. Pitt's Easy Flip Incorporated insisted on these optics. A local paper nominated the local baker, John Doe Henry, to represent the everyday baker. The rules allowed him to recuse any judge. Upon baking day, John made no objections. He was informed that he could spin as many loaves as he wanted. For the first infamous but forgotten competition, John spun only 5 loaves, donating the rest because he knew the other batches needed just that extra amount of aerating, just a little longer. His fans were delighted and full of the still delicious leftovers from John's kitchen. Yet with all the support, the factory submitted 120,000 loaves that day, 2,400 times more than John Doe Henry. The committee blind nibbled every loaf. It took them 3.5 weeks to finish all entries. The news cycle almost forgot about the competition entirely, until Pitt's Easy Flip Incorporated PR firm hired a special reporter to investigate John's practice, claiming he used a dirty kitchen and hired a disrespectful lowlives. After refuting their claims and whisking in the daylight of his own bakery, John Doe Henry challenged them to another bake-off, raised by the few but vocal of his followers defending his honor. No one paid attention to the original bread, which placed 3rd and 4th in the first competition. Years later, as reported in a barely published expose, the factory knew the secret to any grandmother's heart and then subliminally sifted chemicals that would subtly trigger any memory of a grandchild. One grandmother falsely remembered baking similar loaves with her granddaughter. She never stopped insisting, even in her overproved years, that this was a real memory. Yet, the first competition was a deadlock, and the real race was on to see who could bake the most loaves. Real, defined by a holding company in another state, was described as a metaphoric and literal gut belief that a human made the bread. When the final passionate competition began, John didn't sleep for 72 hours as he and his rotating teams of dedicated staff baked loaves after loaves, after even more loaves. After 3 straight days of baking, John and his sleepless team yielded 680 different loaves of bread, each one uniquely flavored and personally scored by him. Putting down the spatula, John Doe Henry's massive arms lifted the final tray as his heart gave out and dusted its last pan. Without much remorse and condolence to his family and community, the factory reduced what remained of the competition, 3,700 loaves of bread that could convince anyone in the public that they were artisan-made. The company's socials kept on cooking the same story. Machines never die. The holding company awarded Pitt's Easy Flip Incorporated the Best Baker Award shortly before the company was folded into a larger processed foods conglomerate. John Doe Henry's loyal fans would try their best to memorialize his last bake by keeping the bread around as long as possible, in tins and old worn-out Tupperware. However, there was not enough stale bread to keep the public from drying up their memories of John. And as he went on, the public even stopped buying Pitt's artisanal loaves. However, sales of Pitt's Easy Flip Incorporated sliced white sandwich bread continue to batter up profits, even today. Yet, and oddly enough, as true as the immortality of any great art form, John Doe Henry's Bakery is still baking down 2 blocks from the original factory. Even though the factory has tripled its workload and is offering more unique concoctions, the bustling neighborhood, with all its convenience and space, still craves artisan loaves from a small but personal bakery, always full of families waiting for their dinner rolls or pastries for their Sunday brunches. And even though most can barely tell the difference between the factory's new line and the still standing bakery, his customers swear that they can still taste the honest-earned sweat in John Doe Henry's ovens, open and serving an aging public in dozens.